It's Spoilerin time, the fantastic show where we take all of the hard work we do covering the industry and Cord Killers, our other show, and figure out how to watch some stuff and then watch it and have fun talking about it. This week, programming note, we have not stopped watching the Larry Sanders Show, but we have paused because we got a lot of stuff coming back at once right now. So we will be talking about The Boys, episodes 1 through 4 of season 2. They premiered 3 at once and then another one. Lovecraft Country, episodes 4 and 5, and Star Trek Lower Decks, episodes 5 and 6. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man. This is the downside of us ever taking a holiday off, is 2 weeks is a lot of TV to watch all at once at the very
last. If you watch it over the 2 weeks, it's not as much at once.
I'm not good at
He's not going to do his homework, Tom. How dare he be
It's not
responsible
homework,
like
it's
that?
Fun. Okay, tell me this. Let's talk about Star Trek Lower Decks, episodes 5 and 6. Did you watch these immediately when they came out?
This is must watch viewing.
Homework.
Yeah. I guess of everything, that clearly means it's my favorite, because this is must-watch viewing. The entire family gathers for the moment I realize there's a new episode available for. This show continues to punch so far above its pay grade. It's great. We had the dating episodes where Boimler gets a girlfriend. Is that right?
Yeah, Cupid's errant arrow, where Mariner gets all suspicious because Boimler has a girlfriend on this other ship that they're working with on a mission, and she's like, she's too good for him. She must be an alien.
Right, and then it turns out it was a week and change.
She had a parasite.
No. He had a parasite. That's what it was, and that
made
was the
him
twist.
attractive. I loved that because I was like, okay, it's probably going to be that she in fact was an alien, right? We're going to be led to believe she's not, and I love that they're like, no. The parasite was on Boimler, and that's why the girl that was too good for him was interested. And now that it's gone, there's no attraction anymore. I thought it was a brilliant ending.
I do like also they had the kind of B plot was all about like ship envy between everyone. Like
right.
Oh my God,
yeah.
their ship's
Tendi and Rutherford like get invited onto the better ship and then turn it down.
That's right. And then of course they just steal the T-99s. it was a very Lower Decks way to wrap everything up on there. But that one was good, but not as good as the follow-up one, which I like the most recent one even more, which was, remind me,
Terminal Provocations, where we have Ensign Fletcher suddenly in grand tradition is like a very important member of the Lower Decks crew whom we've never seen before. And he screws up. He's like, yeah, no, I got this. I'm Ensign Fletcher. I'm your favorite. Screws it up and endangers the entire ship. But at the last moment, accidentally throws his monstrous creation out into the void and saves the ship from an attack. And then, of course, the other plot, I don't even know which one's the main here, actually. The other plot was Tendi and Rutherford on the holodeck getting stuck in the holodeck. So we got a stuck in the holodeck episode with a program that Rutherford had created called or I guess it was Tendi, called Badgie, who goes wrong when the safety protocols get turned off because he's built up resentment.
That moment you realize very quickly that I'm like, oh my God, they're just doing Clippy, aren't they? This is amazing. It was great. It was all the beats. This one had fewer surprises, but I feel like it's an iconic thing. If there was a Dragon Con this year, I feel like I'd see an awful lot of people dressed up as Badgie. It felt like preemptively what I would expect the show to be if you pitched it to me. Which is not to say it's bad. It's just like if you describe the concept to me, this is the type of episode I might imagine right off the bat.
Right, because the holodeck gone wrong is, of course, one of the classic tropes of Trek. They're often considered to be lesser episodes because we end up with, Picard playing detective as Dixon Hill, or, Worf not being a merry man or something. And they what I love is, they do this all the time, is they hit that stereotype right off. They're like, the holodeck isn't just for detective stories or Robin Hood or World War II. And they name all of the holodeck episodes of the previous Star Treks. And they try to pretend like, no, we're going for instruction. We're going to
Which is,
help teach you something.
Maybe what a holodeck should be for.
Yeah, you need to be going on a spacewalk. A holodeck should be used to train you for that.
So, Tom, we mentioned, I believe it was on last Spoilerin time, that I should sit down and when the next time I watch Lower Decks, take note of all the things that I could tell were references or I believed were references.
We want to test whether Bryce thinks he's left out, or whether he really is like, that's a Star Trek reference I don't get, and I noticed it.
And in a perfect version of the Turing test, there would be no moment where you felt like you were on the outside of a joke.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't quite hit that list. But
or if he has something that he feels left out of the joke, we go, that's not a Star Trek reference. That's just a joke that didn't work. Right?
So yeah. I only managed to do it for this most recent Terminal Provocations.
For Terminal Provocations. Okay, good.
And I only had 3. I felt like I had less this time. Maybe it's because I counted. Maybe it's not. The first was the cold open. Do the engines normally sound like a guy going shh, or is that just a bit? Is that just its own thing?
Oh, that was a perfect standalone bit that has nothing to do with it. It is that is a universal science fiction trope. Is that there's a ship engine noise?
But okay, because
and all Star Trek episodes have a different noise. Deep Space Nine is a space station, so it has a different noise than the Enterprise, which has a different noise than Voyager. So,
but also like that expands onto the Expanse and Battlestar Galactica, and
that one's I think that's on the line, right? It's half in there as yes, this is an illusion, and certainly to Star Trek, but not only
because I guess the reason it ticked me off, because you're right, like spaceships don't make a noise. They are in the vacuum of space. But having someone go, yeah, a spaceship sounds like shh, is so like wrong and wildly not what I would think anyone would think a spaceship sounds like. Maybe there was a Star Trek one. Okay.
Well, and if there is a joke there, it's that none of them were remotely close to any of the sounds at all. Yeah.
That was a good cold open bit. I did like, and they didn't like hammer on that anymore after that. I did notice the historical figures listing off all of the other, what I assume were all the other holodeck episodes. Very kind of an obvious one went on.
So you got it though.
I did recognize that was probably what it was.
And that's really all you needed. Like, I didn't sit there going like, oh, it didn't make it better to remember the episodes. It was just the joke of like, there have been holodeck episodes. So
and to
I
be
feel
honest,
like if you got that,
I only really was listening to the first 3 that I recognized. And then I'm like, oh, they're just going to keep rattling them off, and kind of tuned out at that point.
Yeah, no, they got deep. They went into Enterprise and all of that.
And I think that's why I wrote it down. So I tended to not write stuff down that I either knew.
But it didn't get in the way of your understanding.
It didn't get in the
way.
way.
The opening bit, like that's all there is. If you don't understand it, it doesn't work.
But I wrote it down. I think the things I tended to write down, because there were stuff I could tell this is probably not a thing, or if this was a thing, it's well written and I don't need to worry about it.
Okay.
But this was one of those where like, okay, this bit
showed up.
This bit is really going on. And if this was not Star Trek and they were just listing off things, that bit wouldn't have gone as long.
All right.
Yeah.
All right,
so that was my thing about that. The other one was like a really kind of small one, but when Badgie is chasing the other 2 in the broken holodeck, and they're in kind of the desert planet, and they are running off. This is right before the commercial break. They run out of the gate, and it's kind of a scenic shot, and they're panning up over the wall, and you see like a wall going up a mountain, which we later after the break find out is the stairs, and it leads up to like this big pavilion. I couldn't tell if like, oh, is that supposed to be like a historic like holodeck pavilion place, because it's not even where that scene goes after the break.
They go up the stairs and Badgie runs out of
steam.
He gets winded. Remember?
Yeah.
That's how they switch to ice after that.
But what Bryce is asking,
the building on the mountain.
Was there
if it's a reference to Star Trek, I don't know what it is.
I'm in the same boat.
Okay.
I did not recognize anything.
And
I assumed it was just like, oh, they're going to go up a really tall mountain now.
Right.
Okay. Because that didn't read like, I guess it was because that didn't read like stairs to me. It read like a wall and like a big arena.
That's not a Star Trek joke illusion. Failing.
Okay. Yeah. No, I thought Terminal Provocations was pretty good.
That's pretty Star Trek-y with the cold open. We've got one that it's on the fence to me. If not it depends. And then this one is definitely not. This one
Yeah.
doesn't count.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I
right.
felt like 106, and I could feel it in the episode. It was a little better. So maybe it's a thing where they're cooling off as they're writing these scripts.
Right. Or if you pay attention, sometimes if you pay attention and count, you realize things aren't as numerous as maybe they felt if you're not counting. I don't know.
And I ignored, and like I mentioned, I ignored all the stuff that was like kind of obvious.
Right.
So there we go. Lower Decks.
Well, any other thoughts on Star Trek Lower Decks?
Good stuff.
No.
Let's talk Lovecraft Country, episodes 4 and 5, or as I like to think of them, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and really gross.
Yeah. National Treasure and Eli Roth.
Sure, that works.
It's almost I don't know how I'm feeling about this show, guys. I feel like somebody has a pair of D20 dice, and on one of them is labeled every historical anthology trope that you've seen as an Amazing Stories episode, and on the other is every marginalized group of society, and then they just roll the 2d20 and then they mash them up together. Everything from a nod to trans stuff to his dad being uncomfortable and coming to accept his homosexuality.
Okay, but that's not a criticism. So you're saying not only is it that, but you don't like how they're executing it.
It's just, I think they are slow plodding episodes, and I wish they would move faster. And they're beautiful, and the actors are amazing, but the stories are very familiar, and the marginalized groups are very transparently put on display. And
do you think, just going off of your metaphor, do you feel like these two things are being randomly put together? Because I feel like they tend to have strong parallels between reality and the fantasy situations that they set up.
That's a legit point. And you're right about it. It's
because like Strange Case is I think parallels the idea of like code switching, the idea of who you present yourself as in front of other people, other groups of people, and takes it a step farther with the sort of the body horror and the metamorphosis stuff. And then the body horror, it's interesting that we only ever see her metamorph out of being the white woman into being a black woman. And it leaves us with this image constantly of like a bloody murdered white woman, but we never see the opposite, which I think is an interesting choice.
Oh, that's interesting, because I thought mechanically the potion just caused her to transform, and then she had to shed the exoskeleton of the transformed thing.
But we never see that shed of the black form.
You're right. It never occurred to me that there would be one there. I just figured.
So what you're saying, magic. Bryce, is it's a whole lot easier to be white than it is to be black.
Well, I think the episode makes that clear.
I mean, yeah, I just don't know where I'm at with the show. Like,
let me take a stab at what may be making this less enjoyable. Is you were promised and in the first episode it promises this a mystery and an exploration adventure story, and what you're getting is an anthology.
Yes. I was very excited for. I've never read a bunch of the H.P. Lovecraft stuff, and I know it's a shared universe with a bunch of crazy creatures and all that stuff. I was really looking forward to, like, finally, I'm gonna have a culturally relevant way to assimilate all this, and that's not what this is. It's just so far it's a monster of the week.
I wonder about where they're going with that, because in some sense, the book that it's based on is very much feels like a collection of stories. But it's not a collection of episodes the way this is. And I wonder if what they're doing is planting these stories so they can later pull them back together. Or if they're just going to keep treating it more anthology like the way the book does. Whereas the book, if I'm remembering the book right, it has larger stories, right? If you were to make the book literally into the show, it would be a 3 to 4 episode arc on one, then a couple of, several episode arc on the other. And instead, I feel like we're hopping from one to the other while leaving some threads for later telling.
Yeah. And I think I would feel a more pressing interest in wanting to, stick with the importance of learning how to become a wizard to protect the family if I knew who the bad guys were. And
well, History of Violence is closer to that mainline mystery, right? And saying we need to find out who the bad guy is, and the bad guy, who the bad guy is a mystery, right? You know plenty of the bad guys. What you're saying is like, who's the king bad guy? Who's at the top of the pile?
Yeah, and again, like they sort of established that they have a ward over their house, so they're safe within. And I don't know. I don't particularly care for the anthology aspect. That's the big thing.
I really liked both these episodes. I found Strange Case to be really gross. In fact, a little more graphic than I think it needed to be for me. But I loved Strange Case. I loved the depiction of Ruby and handling Ruby talking to the black girl not as like, hey, I'm secretly on your side because I'm a secret black woman, but like, you're not good enough. I should have got this job because I'm qualified and you didn't even study. And if you want to do this, you need to be better. Like I liked that. I liked her journey through that. And I felt like it was a well-told story. The only connection to the mainline story we get though is her doing the catering gig and finding that, okay, these guys are planning something from the police side, and yet they're not really members of the lodge because what's her name, Christina, has told them that directly. History of Violence was fun. I don't know. I it was a nice little jaunt. It was a fun little Indiana Jones tale, and that's where we got some mythology, and we were after the page, and at the end we get the page, but then we don't get the page, but we have a picture of the page, and that one feels like it didn't move us a lot on the storyline, but it was all related to the main storyline.
Yeah, I mean, the moment I realized, like, oh, we're doing Indiana Jones, like, just interest went for me, because it's like...
Because you don't like fun stories that tell an adventure?
Well, no, because the moment I can guess almost all the tropes that are going to happen, and now I'm sentenced to 40 more minutes of... Okay, there's the
sentence to. Wow. Okay.
Down.
Yeah. No, you really don't like
this thing close.
This
There's,
yeah.
And let me guess, the water fills, and they found the thing, and it's like I
didn't find it predictable at all, other than okay, it's going to be an adventure story. Like I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. I really don't see that being the problem with it, at least not for me.
Interesting.
I felt like there was something missing in that episode. Did you guys get a sense of that? No,
I didn't.
The specific moment is when they go down into the initially down into the exhibit, and they've got the 3 pathways, and it almost looks like they're setting up like, oh, they're actually going to go down the wrong pathway.
The wrong pathway, yeah.
And that never gets brought up again, which makes me think either we're going to come back to this, or there's more here. Or
it's not
a
missing,
weird red
but
herring.
it is a weird. They violated Chekhov's gun, right?
Yeah.
Like they put a gun in front of you and they said, "Don't use the gun," and then no one did, and they're like, "Yeah,
they're like,
okay,
okay,
use that gun." Yeah,
we had you, Chekhov.
We had to stop and have Tick say, "Huh? Are we looking at the right gun?" Okay.
Although,
and then it works out.
And it's not clear, so this doesn't solve the problem, but it may be that the problems they had getting to the end were because they picked the wrong. If they had picked the right path, it would have been easy. I don't know.
Also, just like a relatively cheaper looking episode.
No, I didn't notice that either.
I think I don't know. It felt a little cheap, except for the scene where they're opening the door, where it's the long single shot of him messing with the lock under. I did like that.
I never get bothered by that stuff. I'm way too forgiving on cheap looking. Never bothers me. It doesn't strike me as an objection personally. So maybe it did look cheap and I just didn't notice it.
On the one where Ruby becomes a white woman, that one scene where she's explaining, no, you have to be even better than everybody else. It's interesting because I read that entirely as her internal monologue. She was authentically speaking as she would as a black woman to another black woman saying, no, don't you understand the spotlight that is being shown upon us right now? Only those words sound very different coming from somebody in a position of power and of privilege. And I did like that moment.
I think that's right. I got that too, but I liked the extra complicating factor of what she's saying sounds harsh and paternalistic and prejudiced coming from a white woman, because even though we know that a lot of what she's saying is because Ruby is like, no, but I am more qualified than this girl. And I'm mad at her. And I thought that was a really complex and interesting juxtaposition.
That's so interesting because I didn't read that she was mad at her so much as she's
when she talks about like, oh,
her.
Did you take this course? And then it was like, oh no, I didn't.
I just
like,
walked
that's
in.
Ruby being like, man, I took courses. Right. I am qualified. I should have got that job, and you got it because you happened to walk in at the right time.
I read it as the opposite of like, girl, you got to do better. And
and there's also that there's two different aspects. That's what I mean about it being complex. There is also her telling her like, you aren't always going to get to waltz in and just luck into stuff. You have to be better. And that is absolutely true. And I agree. I got that out of it as well. It's both things.
I wonder if there's also an interest. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the Strange Case episode, talking a little bit about some of your issues earlier, Brian, about feeling like there's a lack of a villain or a lack of like a solid antagonist. Right,
or existential threat, or unifying thread that I'm supposed to be following, or
Ruby kind of has that a little bit where, you know, she's given this great power and she uses it to go, you know, work at a department store, which is a personal kind of case for her. But at the end, when she's talking to Christina, she kind of has the revelation like, well, you can do whatever you want. This isn't just the thing in front of you.
The hardest thing you thought you could achieve before this potion was working at Marshall Fields. That ain't true anymore now that you got this potion.
And I wonder if that maybe parallels a little bit with that issue of the show, in that, well, it's not about taking down a villain. It's about going after the power of magic, right? That's kind of what Tick and Letty have been talking about. A little bit, the idea of like, well, if you have magic, you can, it's a whole new game. You have a cheat code. And I guess maybe there's some built-in antagonism with multiple people, like the clubs, trying to fight for their own portion of that magic. But there's not like there's not a big bad inherent in that structure.
You know what it reminds me of is how I felt about X-Files. It's like there were really only two types of X-Files episodes. The ones that dealt with the black goo and the ongoing story and the smoking man, and every other Monster of the Week episode. And I feel like we were dealt a couple of black goo episodes at the beginning of all this that I'm like, oh my God, this is the beginning of a big epic story. And I feel like for 3 episodes straight, we've gotten Monster of the Week episodes. And maybe that's where my
and that's what I was saying about the book is like, I wonder if they're going to pull this all together, because they're telling this chronologically in a way that I don't recall it being told in the book.
Yeah.
I like the Monster of the Week thing. It feels very refreshing to me. I feel like there aren't other prestige level shows like this doing that kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy it's also just easier for me to follow a little bit when they can just be a little more compact. But I totally recognize that, like, we're changing.
Also, we haven't even mentioned the twist, which I'm going to assume Brian either saw coming or didn't think was that big of a deal.
Oh, no. I was surprised by that, but also, I'm only medium invested emotionally in that duality of characters. But I did think that was cool.
Well, what I loved about that twist is it shows that Christina has been doing the same thing as Ruby, right? She's trying to be a white man instead of a white woman.
Yeah, she even complains about how, this is for men only. Earlier in there, yeah.
And so that's why she's able to say, look, you're making a bigger step up, but that means you can make a bigger step up. Go for it, which I think is really interesting as well. Next week, we're going to get a flashback episode to Tick's experience in South Korea.
Looks interesting. The mysterious Korean woman he tries to contact on the phone seems to be pretty simple.
And did battle with in his nightmare.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right, folks. That's Lovecraft Country, episodes 4 and 5. Let's talk about The Boys Season 2, episodes 1 through 4. Now, Brian, you've only seen 1 through 3, so you won't be talking about all of these episodes. And it's been a while since I saw 1 through 3, so I won't be talking as much about those. But overall, how are you feeling about, I know you previewed this a little on Cord Killers. How are you feeling about the opening of Season 2?
Great. And as I said in the main show, The Boys bought itself a lot of grace by being so dark so early from right at the beginning, which allows me to, if you had out of context just shown me the 5-minute segment where the Deep is on an acid trip, mushroom trip, singing a duet about "You're So Beautiful to Me" to the gills in his belly, voiced by Patton Oswalt, I would say, this is a silly, dumb show. What is this, on CW or something? It's only because it so plausibly was dark and sinister early on that it earned that moment. And it's so bizarre. Like, the Deep is so irredeemable in the first couple of episodes that it's weird to, like, and they keep torturing him. They keep just making him the butt of every joke. And then they give us this extended moment when he talks about how when they realize, like, Compound V, that they were all made and they weren't born heroes or whatever. And he talks with real gravitas about the nightmare imagery of the first time he knew he had something special was when he heard goldfish pleading for their lives. And he's able to run a string of things together while genuinely tearing up, one of which was Red Lobster. Which on this, it's getting, if I say silly, that may imply that I'm not respecting it or I don't think it's good, but it's getting wilder now for sure.
Well,
and Homelander,
it's not light, even though it's not deep.
It's a little more cartoonish though, for sure.
It's cartoonishly dark, but still dark. Yeah. Right.
I would say, well, I would agree more with wilder than silly, only because like the oh god, is that episode 3 or episode 4? Near the end of episode 3 where they run a boat into a whale.
Yeah,
I don't think that's silly, but I do think that's wild.
It's wacky. It's cartoonish. It's over the top.
Yeah,
it's getting more cartoonish,
but it's also not lighthearted.
No,
right?
No. Yeah. It's just, so we'll land on cartoonish for if that's a neutral term. Yeah, sure. But same with Homelander, the image of their surrogate Superman just pushing a kid off and then saying like, he's fine. Like it's definitely getting a little bit rubberier,
looser, yeah.
But it's earned enough. It was a scary enough introduction to the world that I'm okay with it. And Stormfront, which I assume isn't that like a white supremacy name?
Yes, and I'm kicking myself for not realizing that when I watched these first 3 episodes.
Really?
Because when she turns, I'm like, oh.
It's so funny because I tweeted some impressions about that.
Storm from X-Men.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just a play on that. And like the penny didn't drop for me.
I had a friend text me immediately after I tweeted my thoughts of Stormfront being a very obvious name for a racist superhero, and he goes, "No, man, a lot of people don't know what Stormfront is." So it's interesting to hear you also say that, because I think you are a very online person Tom.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And once she turned, I was like, oh, Stormfront. Like, it just
Yeah.
wasn't top of mind for me.
But I
Like,
do appreciate that it's also not some huge, big, dramatic bum surprise moment. It's just like, yeah, her name's Stormfront.
Yeah.
She's killing. She's
Right.
in a
What did you
she's
think?
destroying this project. So I think that's a good introduction to her, and I like her as both an antagonist to what's his name, the main character and his
Homelander.
No, the outlaws, all of them.
Right.
Butcher.
Butcher and
Huey.
Huey. She as being a superhero is kind of antagonistic to him, but also she and Homelander, right, have that butting of heads because she is gaining popularity because she's on social media and she's taking meme culture and she's contrarian to Vought, but not necessarily the superhero community. It's an interesting character for sure.
I don't know if they get into it by episode 4, but by the end of episode 3, there was a strong sense of, oh, I'm smelling a reason that the boys have to team up with Homelander for some Stormfront related.
Not yet.
Pushback.
No, I will say that does not happen yet. What we do find out is Stormfront's backstory and who she was in the past. We don't know exactly how she got back into the Seven, but she was a 70s era hero called Lady Liberty or just Liberty?
Just Liberty, I believe.
Oh, that's right. They showed like a random early on. They're all like, "Look at this pinup." Anyway, anyone remember Lady or Liberty?
So in episode 4, there's kind of dual road trips going on where Huey and Frenchie go to investigate with Mother's Milk.
Also, Billy Joel makes a reappearance.
Yeah, I believe he's been in every single episode. I believe every single episode has
Maybe
featured
right about that,
a Billy Joel song.
Oh, interesting. So they go and look for more information on Liberty, and they find out that she had. Wait, Tom, can you give me the details on this? She kills this young black kid's parents.
Yeah, I'm a little fuzzy on all the details myself, but yeah, she kills someone, and to cover it up, they pay off the survivor, who has kept quiet all this time, and that's the information that is uncovered on the road trip that they now hope to be able to use.
And that woman who's telling them that information points at the newspaper and says, "No, this is her. This is Liberty.
That's her.
It's
Yeah,
Stormfront."
and points at Stormfront.
Even though Stormfront looks to be a rather young woman.
Yeah, but superhero. She didn't age.
Do they not age? Because some of the.
I mean, that could be one of her powers.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but I believe episode 1, in the first 5 minutes, they're having an argument about what's the best Billy Joel song. Him and his girlfriend before she is gooified.
I'd forgotten that. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, there's a whole Billy Joel thing I had not even noticed.
Yeah.
Also, Butcher and finally finds his wife, but Homelander finds her first. And so Butcher has to deal with the fact that his wife has given birth to Homelander's son. The son was being protected from Homelander, but because Homelander breaks the deal, now the son's powers are reemerging. And in episode 4, we get Butcher trying to rescue her and then having her realize that Butcher is never going to love the son because it's Homelander's son, and she can't do that.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That'll be wild.
That I like all of the steps on that plot of Butcher and his son and the Homelander stuff. I thought it was not as strong in episode 4. I thought seeing Homelander very forcibly push his way into this home where he is not welcomed clearly by either the mother or the son, and just continuing to kind of force his way through. I thought I like the tension on that, where the Butcher and his wife stuff was just like, I'm under a bridge, we're gonna be back under the bridge. It felt a little tame, but I wonder. Yeah, I didn't expect the kid to have superpowers. I was
like, they make a big deal about him hiding from the camera in her car, and she has to pretend like she's going out for cigarettes. But then they can just like hang out at that bridge and she'll run home and come right back.
Yeah, right. The same night. And then wouldn't they bug her car? To me, it would be obvious that they would bug the car.
Oh, but also A-Train's back.
And A-Train's back. That's right.
How did he die at the end of season 1?
Did he die?
He didn't die. He was put in a coma
because it was found out that he was using compound. He was juicing.
Yeah, he had like an aneurysm or a heart attack or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But he's getting the little tinnitus
kind of coming or going.
Yeah.
Whereas I do like the confidence that Starlight is showing, where it's just like, what did you do? It's like, hey man, whatever I did, you knew, and you did nothing. So welcome, we're in a thing together. Like and then that was the end of it. It was just like Mexican standoff, we're done. And it's like, okay.
Now in episode 4, she belies that confidence by saying she's scared every moment she's in there, which to me is even braver, right?
Like, I mean, she certainly is acting very brave.
Yeah. But she tells Huey that she hates being in there, but she has to, and she has to do it and all of that. We also met Kimiko's brother, and then he was killed.
Yeah.
Did
they fully kill him or just break off his hands?
Oh, I believe she snaps his neck in that same scene.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how that scene ends.
All right.
I feel like I missed something in episode 1, and I kept wondering just on the foundational premise of what are they doing with this guy? Is there only one super terrorist left, and it's Kimiko and her brother? But there's
as I understand it, they're almost trying to audition. Like they know that there are other people out there that have been compound V'd, and
by Homelander. Homelander intentionally did it to get those PMC contracts.
Exactly, and so now you could see them workshopping. Like Homelander very clearly wants the word supervillain. Nobody likes it. They keep calling them super terrorists, and I think we're ramping up to just like the Deep at the beginning of episode 1 was irredeemable, and we've watched for a season and a half him become increasingly sympathetic along. The 7 at the end of season 1 are irredeemable, and I think we're gonna see Stormfront hook up with more and more people to where weirdly we're going to legitimately be cheering for the 7 in an unironic way by the end,
or at least the 6 minus Stormfront, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're back to 7 when they get the Deep back in.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right. Couple of things from episode 4. One is the outing of Queen Maeve, where Homelander, during a live interview, says, well, of course we have diversity in the 7. Maeve here's a lesbian.
Which is it's as awful as it sounds. It's just because here's just to set it up. He's talking to Maria Menounos, hard-hitting journalist Maria Menounos, who says, well, like there's what was it, 4% of minority people have, or no, sorry, of people who are supers of very small minorities, 6% or something are like not white. And his response is, well, look at the 7. We got black guy, and we got
he says we have A-Train, and we have Black Noir, who's something.
It doesn't declare, and so that's all of those people. And we've got a gay, and it's Maeve. And it's just like, wow, that's so he's so transparently awful that how is anyone not seeing that as an awful thing?
I mean, that is a long-running theme. It's the way Hollywood talks about the rest of the world when they're not putting it on a poster. And and spoiler alert, that's how Hollywood talks when they're not putting it on a poster.
Within the boys, you have the added thing of Maeve now fearing for her life because she was keeping the secret because she was afraid of what Homelander would do if he found out. And he just not only outed her on national television, but also revealed that he knew.
Yeah.
And so she's shaking in her boots like, okay, what the hell now?
And he's acting like he doesn't care, which I guess is tied
always
into
a bad side with him.
Having the kid and the wife stuff, which is gonna blow up.
Yeah.
Right. The kid's gonna overpower him, right?
The other thing from episode 4 I wanted to touch on was the the fact that Madeline Stillwell is kind of back.
Oh God. So yeah, Homelander goes to a Lincoln log cabin.
Yeah,
and is just hanging out with Madeline Sitwell until the shapeshifter loses his form and turns back into the balding, overweight guy who has been shapeshifting into doppelganger into Sitwell. Which I
would imagine he didn't like that.
He was frustrated by it.
Turn back now.
I think they've been double hard on all the milk stuff, by the way, this season compared to season 1. He's always drinking milk. You know, when doppelgangers Sitwell, she's like putting the fingers in the milk. Oh, you thirst. It's so much. Oh, and then at the end, Doppelganger turns into Homelander and
he's like, hey, this is who you really want to sleep with, right? Yourself, right? And you can see Homelander maybe be tempted mildly for a half a second, and then he kills Doppelganger because he's like, I don't need anyone.
Yeah, which just, okay, we're just doing, we're just murders everywhere. There's not even
I mean, that's not out of character for Homelander, given episode 1 of season 1, where he murders the plane and everybody on it.
Yeah. Totally.
So, The Boys.
The Boys, episodes 1 through 4. Thank you for hanging out with us on Spoilerin Time. You get these episodes early if you're a patron, patreon.com/cordkillers. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.